And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey here, Season 5, Episode 2 of Looking Back with Lynskey. Half a decade of this. Today's guest, he's different from the great class of 2002, one of my favorite eras at Columbus. It was a different place, and he was a key character in making it different. The founder of Souls by Sir, integral part of My Cause, My Cleats. He has crossed so many leagues. He's an amazing artist, an amazing entrepreneur. And despite all that success, he will forever be known as the Sandwich King of Columbus High School. It is my pleasure, Explorer Nation, to welcome Marcus Rivero to the show. Marcus, welcome, brother.
Oh, how's it going, man? That was an amazing intro. How you been, sir?
I've been great. I'm not as good as you, but I'm trying to be. And, before we get into this amazing story of entrepreneurship and believing in a dream and making it happen and happy accidents and all those things that go into a success story, let's go back to where it all began. And, for you, for me, for people that were there, it's hard to describe what Columbus was exactly like back then, but we're gonna go back to those glorious days. And Marcus, explain how you got to Columbus and what led you there, and what it was like being an explorer at the turn of the new millennium.
So it's crazy. So I prior to Columbus, I went to St. Brendan, which was right next door. I was a public school kid my whole life, and my mom got worried about me going to public middle school. So she stuck me into St. Brendan. And once I realized what the whole thing was about, played sports obviously my whole life, and then I saw Columbus, it was the natural next step for me. I was like, all right, well, I want to go to Columbus. I want to play baseball. That was my sport growing up. I never touched a football, never did anything. I was like, I want to go there and play baseball. So sure enough, I become picked to be in Scholastic Olympics when I'm in 8th grade. Math was always my subject. It just came natural to me. So they did this. Columbus would host a Scholastic Olympics for, junior high kids. Yeah. So I won a gold medal. I went to LaSalle. I won a gold medal. And that's it. I was like, all right, I'm going to Columbus. I get there and I do the orientation. Then I found out football. I'm like, wait a second. I want to do this. I want to bang people's heads in and get cheered for doing it. Sure. So that was my thing. I mean, Columbus, there was no option for me. That's where I wanted to go. It didn't matter what it was. And that's where my parents put me, thankfully. And it was the best 4 years of my life.
It is so great to hear. And you did come at a really amazing time in Columbus history. It was pretty freewheeling at the time. And kids, I mean, you guys weren't bad or anything like that, and you learned things, but fun was a real part of the curriculum back then.
Yeah, it was, and again, it was all good-hearted kids. We did some bad stuff for the time, but it wasn't bad. It was wholesome bad. And, we weren't really troublemakers. We liked to, mess around and fool around, but we never pushed crazy envelope. But yeah, it was a great time. But everybody understood what they were there for. Got their schoolwork done, whether they got it with a D or an F. That's to each person. But we all got through it, and then we all had amazing social lives. And when you go to Columbus, that's the thing. It forces you to become a very social individual, because if you want to meet anybody, you can't go to school and just meet your girlfriend or meet other friends. You have to be social. And back in those days, I remember Sunset Place had just opened up, and that was a hangout, the Grove. So it was you had to be social. So you had your cliques in Columbus that we became really, you were like brothers. And if you said you went to Columbus, whether you spoke to that person or not, there was an instant attraction that all right, this is my dude. And yeah, it was a good time.
Your class, the class of 02, the class of 03, that period, I mean, all our classes are close, no doubt. It's just the way we are. But that time period is exceptionally tight, and you have produced amazingly successful people. Looking back on those days, I mean, I'll tell you, bro, yesterday I mentioned we were doing this, and everybody I mentioned it to did two things. They smiled and they laughed, and everybody had a Marcus story. And so, what was it when you look back, what are some of your, those memories that pop? Be it sports, be it the hallways, be it class, be it the cafeteria. You're an artist. Paint that picture for us.
Well, for me, in order to understand, and you mentioned earlier, sandwich king thing, like to me, high school and sandwich and entrepreneurship was it. That's why I realized if I didn't have to, I was never going to work for anybody else. So high school, I immediately think of sandwiches. I think of all my 14 employees, teachers, janitors I had on payroll. Football was amazing. And nobody ever gets past that. They only know me as the sandwich guy. So football was amazing. School was, it was a difficult, challenging school, but I loved it. I left Columbus so many credits. So I was basically a sophomore in college when I got out of high school.
Yeah.
But man, it was like beach bash. I can remember like it was yesterday, my first like Columbus party. Football, I remember when I came there freshman year, there was like this 10-minute like Indian run where there was people just dropping like flies, vomiting everywhere. Yeah, it was wild, man. Some of my best times were around football, were around obviously selling sandwiches, making a lot of money. And then teachers. I had good relationship with teachers because, it wasn't just like you're a student, I'm a teacher. They actually cared about you. So you could talk about your personal life. You could talk about stuff that was going on. And many of the teachers I'm still friends with and still speak to, and I can run into in a hallway and we can have a 30-minute conversation and feel like 10 seconds. So those are the main things I would tell you that, man, like Columbus was just amazing.
You hit on something, and this has come up before where particularly, and it included other people, but particularly alumni teachers with you guys, there was this tacit understanding that, yes, you can't be an idiot all the time. And no, you probably shouldn't do that. But one day, we're going to have a different kind of relationship and we understand what you're doing. And I think that is unique to our school.
Yeah.
Because we were the same idiots you were, quite frankly.
Yeah. And the best part about it was that it was almost like an older brother situation with many of them. So it's like they put you in check when you need to be put in check, but they were there to help you. They were there to understand. Like I've had multiple beers with many people that were my teachers. And then I look back and I'm like, wait, you're the principal now? And you're this and you're that. And I'm like, wait a second, you were like my freshman football coach. And you would get mad. Like, I mean, Mr. Pugh, I look at Mr. Pugh like my freshman football coach. And he was, I think, a guidance counselor back then. Yes. And Oso and then Trujillo and all these names. And I'm like, you guys who put you in power in this school?
How did these things happen? Yes.
Yeah. But then you blink and you're like, well, wait a second. It's been 21 years since I graduated and they're still there. Yeah. So it's like it says a lot about the school, about the human, and about the institution, because it's like for somebody to be at any job for 20 years takes a lot, and to love the job because they're still just as passionate today as when they were screaming at me my freshman season. So it's like it's amazing, and it's like you look at it and I'm like, man, like imagine that where hopefully one day where my kids will be taught by some of the people that were my coaches and some of my teachers, which is amazing. And I know guys that have had kids early in life and now their kids are at Columbus, and the same people that were screaming at us are now screaming at their kids. And it's such a great, like cool, full circle moment.
And yes, and that is very fulfilling as a teacher. And you don't even worry about the fact that you're older. It's just cool that, yeah, I had your dad, and you're the same idiot your dad was, and so that's a wonderful thing that we do. But this, let's just get it out in the open, and it's actually serious in a funny way. You mentioned a moment ago your entrepreneurship, that you never wanted to work with anybody else, actually started by selling sandwiches at Columbus, which, yes, was against the rules, but there was opportunity there because let's just be kind and say that the food in the cafeteria was perhaps not satisfying. So, and you got 1,700 boys that are hungry all the time.
Yeah.
So how, again, you're an artist, you're creative. Where did you come up with this notion of, well, I can sell sandwiches, have money, and yada, yada, yada? How did it happen, bro?
So it's crazy. So I looking back, I can honestly say I've been blessed with a talent from my parents, especially my dad, where I could look at something and see, okay, there's a problem. Now, how can I fix it and make money doing it? So my thing was this, like when you're 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old young boy, you're starving at all times, right?
All the time, like a dog.
And if you play sports or you're the typical guy, you're running late to school, you didn't have breakfast.
Yeah.
So this problem went back to like on the weekends, I would work with my father. My dad had a wheel and tire, like Pimp My Ride type of store. I'd work there and I'd get paid. But when you're in high school and you're a Columbus guy, you know, you want to have the hottest girlfriend, be able to go to the coolest things, and that takes money. And back then, I mean, it's not like now. Now $100 doesn't even get you in a movie sometimes. Back then, like you would have X amount of money and it had to last you. But the type of fun we wanted to have, you needed more money. So my whole thing was like, all right, how can I make more money? And I'm starving. And then one day I was like, wait a second, I could figure this out. I'll just take a Cuban bread and I'll put ham and cheese and mayo and apparently my secret recipe that nobody knew, which was honey mustard, and sell these things. So I sat down and I was good at math. So I sat down and said, okay, what will it cost me to make this sandwich? And I did the numbers and I was like, okay, what's a good number that I could sell a good amount of these and make money? So I was like, all right, back then it was $2. So I would take a Cuban loaf of bread, which was a good size, and then divide it in 3. So they were good size sandwiches. And I'd sell each one for $2. The first day I did it by myself, sold out in minutes. By the end of that week, I was selling a good amount, maybe, I don't know, 10 loaves a day. Let's just fast forward. By the time I took that business for 3.5 years. I got caught 2 months before I graduated. At that point, I had 14 employees. I was selling well over 200 loaves a day. It was out of control. And then I was making in high school, to give you an idea, back then, an average after employees, because after a while I was too busy. I had my grandma. I would pay my grandma to make them. After paying everybody off, incorporating like severance pay when people got caught. Teachers that
severance pay.
Wow, I'll get into it for you. It's wild. I was making anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 a week every week.
You got to be kidding me.
No, it was, and then the best part was 1s, 5s, and 10s. So you thought I was a drug dealer. I'd come home and I had drawers of stacks of cash that I eventually figured out a gas station by my house that wanted change. So I would go there on Fridays for like $500. Hey, can I have 20s and 50s? And I became friends. And yeah, that's kind of what I did for 3.5 years.
You know, I knew you were making money. Everybody, I didn't know it was that much back then. And it was quite an enterprise. And again, we're not making light of the rules or anything. We're concentrating on the fact that you figured out supply and demand real fast.
Yeah, and I did. And I didn't realize. So I graduated with a business degree. I took many business courses. If I were to tell you that in every class I took, there was something that I had learned or I already knew throughout that experience, it was supply and demand, employees, HR. I mean, it got to the point where I knew people were in trouble because when you got in trouble, they would take the bag and your money, which got donated, I think, to Foster. They would take the bag to the teacher's lounge and some teacher would tell me, hey, thanks for lunch, which was code for somebody got in trouble. So, I mean, and listen, and the way it worked, I knew that I studied the rules. I knew everything about the system. If you got in trouble in Columbus for selling sandwiches, your first time offense was a detention.
Yes.
Second time, it got a little bit difficult. But so my guys that would get in trouble, detention or 2, it'd be simple. And I didn't even have to do this, but it was just, this is what I did. If you got in trouble, right? I'd be like, okay, so you were an average employee making $80 a week. Okay, John, here's $160 for 2 weeks. You don't have to sell anything. All you got to do is keep your mouth quiet. And then 2 weeks after that, you can come back and work for me. So that was my severance package. That's literally what I did. Now, I always thought, man, I'm really genius because nobody's ratted me out. But it wasn't even, I don't even think it was the money that caused people not to rat me out. What caused people was basically this whole mob mentality. Because if you ratted me out, I'm not going to, I would be mad, but I wasn't going to do anything. I had 13 other employees of your peers that are going to be pissed off. You just cut their money supply. So that was the whole system. And that's what I did. I was getting people faxing me back then their schedules in the summertime. Wow. I had a map in my room of the whole Columbus campus every time. All right, at first period, second period, third period. And I wouldn't take you on as an employee if you conflicted with somebody who I already had.
Oh, a very significant person. Let's just leave it at that. Employed at Columbus now tells a great story of he had a particular legendary science teacher as his base of operation. You know, like homeless people have their corner and another home, but do not come into my turf.
Yeah.
He had to take care of an interloper trying to cut in on his business. And it was, I know this to the average person, this might sound a little unusual, but to us, It's Columbus doing what Columbus does. And it honestly was a life lesson. And, again, uh, Mr. McKeon laughed about it. Albert Tamayo, Coach Pugh. I mean, Mr. Linfor said, "Oh yeah, that guy blew out my knee on the sidelines." I mean, man, you made an impression in a lot of ways.
But, I never try to go. I was just being me, and my thing was I wasn't a shy kid for certain things. I was always out there, and I just that's how my family was. So I made. I guess I made my mark in a way, and and it was easy in that school to get along with a lot of people. Like, again, going back to the teachers made it really easy to feel comfortable. And again, this wasn't one of those like disciplinarian where you couldn't say anything. You're sitting there. I mean, we screamed in class, but we paid attention. We'd give freshmen crap when they'd walk in the room towards your junior, senior year. Like, and that's the way it worked. Because when I was a freshman, I hated walking into an upperclassman's room because I knew the type of stuff I was going to be told and stuff was going to be thrown at me. And I took it. But it never passed a certain line. But you knew it was coming. It was your older brother that was going to beat you up, but it never passed a line of, like, to be very clear, it was a fun type of joke, and it was like, they'd mess with you, but never. But those are the same people that if God forbid something happened to me in the street and they were somewhere near and they didn't know me, but they knew I went to Columbus, they would have my back in a heartbeat. It was just that's what Columbus was.
Perfect summation, brother. Perfect summation. And the memories you helped create from that era are magical. So you graduate from Columbus. You're, solid student, no doubt. You went on to Case Western,
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah, I graduated pretty high in my class. I was a smart kid in school, but I was still like a jock. I went to Case Western because my mom didn't want me to stay here, and I played football and I wanted to continue. So I was between Case, Carnegie Mellon, and Johns Hopkins.
You know what? For 1 second, that's really amazing for a Cuban mom to actually want her son to leave Miami.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And how was that? Are you glad you did it?
I'm super glad. I was almost in tears. I was like, why are you doing this? All my friends' parents are trying to hold them at FIU, Miami-Dade, UM. And my mom's like, you need to become a man. You need to experience life outside of Miami. And it was the best because, listen, if you've lived in Miami your whole life, nothing against it, you get this whole, I don't care how nice you are. There's like can I curse? Or is this like
as long as it's not the big one, yeah.
No, like you become a little bit of an a-hole. Like it's just Miami. You just become a little bit of Miami, right?
Yeah, it's Miami. Yeah.
It's Miami. So when I left Miami and I went to Ohio out of all places, I blend right in until you read my name. And I always joked because at Case there was a big cafeteria hall that they would hang the flags of all the students' nationalities. And there was no Cuban flag until I got there. So I was the one Cuban kid in that school. But it was the best thing I did because I went for a year. I played football. It was great. I had started a company with my family midway through high school that had blown up. And my dad was having heart complications. So I transferred back to UM, gave up football, but I get to experience it for a year. It was great.
Right.
I mean, I learned how to do the whole thing. I met a lot of people. I changed a lot because it was just like you adapt to where you're at. And the Midwest is, I mean, there's nothing to see there, but there's amazing human beings. Like some of my best friends are from there because, again, I mean, do I recommend going to Cleveland, Ohio? Absolutely not.
I was going to ask about that winter, bro.
It sucks. Yeah, that's the problem. Like that, I'm used to practicing in like 90-degree weather, like ripped t-shirts and like helmets. So one of the stories I get, so we get up there for football a month before the school starts. They put you in your dorm, and the best part about it, I ended up in an all-female dorm. Don't ask me how, with 6 other football players. It was
no, great. That's wrong. That's wrong. Yeah.
The best part is when you get that letter from the school and it says your roommate is going to be Kim Bryan. I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I just didn't see the little comma, which was really Brian Kim. So no, I went up there a month early, and it was, the weather was great. There was no air conditioning though. And I'm like, listen, I need a room transfer. There's no AC. I can't do this. They're like, no, you'll be fine in 3 weeks. I'm like, why 3 weeks? They're like, I made my parents go to Home Depot and get me like a turbine fan that was just loud as heck. I used it for 3 weeks. And then after that, you sleep with the windows open. Beautiful. Mid-October, everybody still thinks it's beautiful. Not me. It was literally already like 50 degrees, and we would practice at 4 a.m. So they gave you a duffel bag of team issued gear, right? And for practices, whether it was walkthroughs, whatever, it was a jumpsuit or t-shirt. So there was 4 Florida kids, and I was the Southernest one. Every practice at 4 in the morning, I had everything they had issued me. Like, I had everything on, and I'd go to practice just shivering, and us 4 would just stand next to each other. So yeah, the winter gets brutal. My spring break, my flight was delayed because it was snowing, and I'm like, and then I get to Miami and I'm drenched because it's like 95 degrees with humidity. But outside of Cleveland being Cleveland, the people were amazing. I had amazing life experiences up there. I love everything about it. I just came back because of my situation, and then I went to UM, which was a whole nother situation. But yeah, I recommend leaving at least for a year, at least so you can understand that Miami's not everything. You can come back. Like all my cousins that went to Columbus, they left and they never came back. So it's like, I would tell my kids, you got to go. Like, experience what it's like to wake up, experience what it's like to not have mommy and daddy there, and live. And sometimes, listen, you have to rough it, and it is what it is.
I think if any young or future explorers are listening to this, those are words to live by right there. Thank you, Marcus. Get out. You can always come back, but you come back a different person.
Yes.
So I find it fascinating that you're a math guy, okay? Because math is so linear and structured. And at the same time, and not many people are like this, you either are or you aren't. You're one or the other. You're amazingly creative. You're an artist. Let's talk. How does that work? Because I can't add. I'm terrible, but I have a creative side. Very few people are blessed with both sides. So it seems that you took your mathematical abilities and your business sense and entrepreneurial sense and married it to this artistic side. And we're going to get into how successful you've been. But when did you realize that you also had this other side to you?
It's crazy because, like, and I joke about this all the time with my mom and sometimes my assistants. It's like, I didn't go to art school. I've always loved art. Like, my favorite subjects growing up were math was number 1, lunch was number 2, PE number 3, art was number 4. Like, that's just the way I loved it. But since I was so concentrated in school and like football and baseball and sports, art was like, I did it. I painted, I think, 1 or 2 things and hid it from the world. Nobody knew I did anything.
Really?
And then I had painted. I remember I had a couple art teachers at Columbus who were great. Eisenberg, rest in peace. He was one of them. He was an amazing human. But I loved it. Like, I thought art was so cool, and I thought art was like just fun. And it was different than what I was so accustomed to doing in sports and math. And like you say, linear stuff, that there is a right and wrong answer. In art, there's no such thing. And then, like, 14 years ago, because this is going to be my 14th NFL season, 14 years ago, at the time I was dating a person, and it was Valentine's Day-ish, and I wanted to get something different than your typical chocolate candies, whatever.
Yeah.
And I've always been a sneaker person. And as I grew up and I had more dispensable income, I started to collect sneakers. When I was in Columbus, mom and dad gave me 1 shoe. It had to last the whole season, and that's just the way it worked. So, and ironically, and I had forgotten about this for a decade. I used to paint the bottom of my cleats in Columbus red, because back then, before technology became technology, I had a problem with watching myself on tape because it was VHS and that the quality.
Yeah.
So I used to spray before every football game the bottom of my cleats red and the toes, so I can see myself on TV. And that was my first real experience, but it dropped there. Then 14 years ago, like I said, I was dating this person. I wanted to get her some sneakers. She hated sneakers. And then I couldn't find it in a color that I appreciated. So I was like, you know what? I bet you I can paint this. So I bought paints, bought brushes, bought glitter, bought a whole bunch of stuff. Spent 20 hours on that pair of shoes.
Wow.
To this day, it's one of my favorite ones I've ever painted. I gave it to her. She loved it. She put it on social media. Next thing you know, everybody around me they were friends with me, had no clue I did this. They're like, oh my God, Mark, can you paint? My dad's a Yankee fan, or my daughter's going to have an Elmo birthday next weekend. So I did like 10 or 12 of those. And it was fun. I truly enjoyed it. And then a football player saw it somehow on Instagram, and his name was Nolan Carroll, who is my best friend. He saw it, and he's like, hey, can you do a pair of sneakers for me? Crazy story. Long story short, he tells me to do Statue of Liberty. I'm like, yeah, I've done this hundreds of times before. This is the Columbus and me coming out. Like, you just BS it until you make it, and then you fake it till you make it. So yeah, I've done this. And so at that time, there was no YouTube about this or nothing. What it meant was I did Google research, make the shoe look weathered like the Statue of Liberty. So green with rust and black and all this crazy stuff.
Okay.
So I buy my first airbrush gun. Don't know what I'm doing. I'm just spraying and spraying and spraying and spraying. I got like 30, 40 layers of paint on this guy's shoe. It was a hideous shoe. And at the time I used to paint in my kitchen. So I used to have an island in my kitchen. So I'm painting there, sitting on a stool. I hated the shoe at this point. Like I was like, this looks so bad. What am I doing? And he keeps like sending me messages like, hey, can I see? Can I see? Can I see? So I finally said, okay. And I take a picture and I send it to him. And what came next is a story that I didn't tell anybody for like 7 years. And it's the worst 2 words you can ever hear in your life when you're hoping for acceptance. And he wrote back, it's okay.
Ooh, yeah.
I remember taking my phone and going, slamming it down. This is where happy accidents happen. This is where nobody knew about this for a long time. When I threw my phone down, so I'm on my kitchen counter, like the island, acetone falls on the shoe. So I panic, reach to the stove, which is 2 feet away, wipe it. When I wiped it, all those layers that I had just painted and I hated, the acetone kind of ate at them. So when I wipe it, it looked like this beautiful granite marble counter. It was gorgeous. So then I do another Columbus thing, take a picture. Haha, just kidding. How about now? And he's, oh my God, I'm in love. That's the start of Souls by Sarah. Literally, that is the story. It was an accident. So then, of course, when he loves it, I got to purposely drop acetone on the second foot and do the whole accident. And that's how it happened. And that's literally the start of everything.
Happy accident, right?
Yes. It was
meant to be.
Yeah, it was.
So you start with Nolan, and you know, as locker rooms are, as we know, word spreads very quickly in a locker room. And talk about this happy accident for one guy, how it just, I'm not going to call you an overnight success because you worked hard at it, but it obviously just exploded exponentially. Talk about that whole thing.
So it was another accident. So that was just Nolan's pair of sneakers. So this was right around, March, April. So the season's starting to kick off, in August. Yeah. He reaches back out. He's like, hey, I have another project for you. And this is where my life took that pivotal turn that had I not met Nolan in particular, we're not having this conversation today. So Nolan's like, hey, I need you to do my game cleats. So I say no. And my argument to him was, with sneakers, you could be very careful when you walk that you don't step in a puddle, that somebody doesn't step on you. With your game cleats, like, listen, the last thing you're worried about is your shoes. You're worried about the job at hand, the guy in front of you. Yeah. And they're big men. They're not small guys. So I'm like, I can't do this. If I paint the shoe, it's going to crack. Who knows what's going to happen? This man calls me 7 nights in a row. He became like Tony Robbins on steroids. Like, you got this. You could do this. I don't know. Believe in yourself. And every night was no. And I remember on the 7th night, I was so pissed. I was like, just stop. I was like, all right, I'll tell you what. I'll do it. I'm not going to charge you, though, because I don't even know if this is going to work. And so he tells me, if this works, I promise you I'm going to repay this favor to you one day in your life. All right, cool, no problem, whatever it is. So the argument was, back then there was 4 preseason games. The starter is very little game 1, a little bit more in game 2, but game 3 is when they play the half back then. Yeah, so the decision we made was, get me the shoes for game 1. I'm going to wear them 1, 2, and 3. So that way it's basically been through a whole game. I'll call you at the end of the game 3. I had season tickets to my family. So I remember I was what any other person, I was in my early 20s, would do. Took binoculars and I stared at this man's feet the whole game. From in the game, sideline, walk to get water. I was just looking at this man's feet. So on the way home after game 3, I get the phone call. I'm like super nervous. I'm in the car with my parents. They're like, just pick it up, see what happens. Hey, Mark, the shoes are perfect. Nothing's wrong with them. So I'm like, yes. He's like, I'm sending you a box of these black Jordan shoes. Do whatever you want. Just make them match my uniform. Cool. I get the box the next day. The shoe was only available anywhere in the market in black. So as long as I changed the color, everybody were going to know immediately like something was different about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was like, hey, Nolan, I got to see if I can slide you in. I have a lot of customers. I had 0 customers at the time. But this is just built. This is Columbus and me coming out like, oh, he's like, yeah, please see what you could do. I was like, I got you. So at the time, I had my tire company. At the time, it was a wholesale company. So I'd come home at 6 o'clock, and I was spraying. I wish I had one here, with an airbrush gun that was intended for wooden fences. So the smallest radius was like a good 8 inches. It was crazy. And I'm doing this in an apartment in Brickell. Like, I feel bad for that landlord, but it was like I was spraying in there. So it takes me like a week. I'm done. hey, Nolan, I've got the shoes ready to go. I'll drive them up to, about an hour north because I wanted to do the cool thing, take the photos, put it on the Instagram, etc. He's like, no. He's like, just ship them. And I remember like, why? He's like, remember that favor I promised you a couple weeks ago? I'm like, yeah, thank you so much for the business. And he goes, no, dummy, the favor's not the shoes. The favor is where you're about to ship this box. So he gives me the address. I don't even Google it. I run to FedEx next door. I overnight it to him. What he did, going back to your question, which about the locker room, was he shipped it to, back then they used to train, I think it was in Nova or University of North.
Yeah.
So he receives it, but these football players, just like any athlete, when they're little kids, the best description is little kids with a lot of money. They get boxes in front of their locker rooms. And then what do the teammates? Oh, what's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box? And sneakers have always been a cool thing.
Yeah.
He gets these 12 pairs with zero intentions of doing what he's about to do. He just wants to show off. He starts opening these boxes. Teammates start going wild. Oh my God. Next thing you know, they start throwing money and taking shoes. He had no intentions of selling them. He sold 10 of those 12 pairs for like $6-7 grand, some crazy amount. So he calls me. I'm in the shower. He calls me. Hey, Mark, I'm so sorry. I was like, why? What's up? He's like, I never intended this to happen, but my teammates pressured me. They bought like 10 of these pairs. I've got like $6-7 grand to give you, and on top of the money that I was going to give you. But I hope you don't mind. I just gave your phone number out.
Oh,
and
shit.
That night I went from 1 to 8 customers, like overnight.
Yeah.
Those 8 guys, what I didn't realize was at this point, Instagram was just blowing up. But keep this in mind, before you make it to the league, you play at some college, right? So for example, there was one guy on the Dolphins. His name was Jamar Taylor. He went to Boise State. The one with the blue field. I think it's Boise. And his roommate was Jamar Taylor, who at the time played for the Seattle Seahawks. So when I did Jamar's shoes and he posts them up, his college roommate's like, yo, where did you get this? And he's like, oh, my buddy here. He's like, so next thing you know, I'm getting a call from the Seahawks. Hey, we got this shoe. And then it just starts going. And then what I realized is after 2-3 seasons, when I went from end of year 1, I had maybe like 30-40 customers. End of year 2, like 300-400. And after that, it just blew up because I became a fan of people getting cut, getting traded. Because all of a sudden, if you played for the Dolphins and you were my customer, and now you got cut, traded, released, whatever, and you end up on the 49ers, guess what? You're gonna tell me first, change all my Dolphin shoes to 49ers colors.
Yeah.
All your teammates are like, where do you get this? Here's his phone number. So now I just got that locker room. By the end of year 3, I had guys on every single NFL team every single week.
That's an incredible story, but that's, a Columbus and an American success story. And, you touched on something, your use of social media early on. Again, you must recognize things and understood, particularly people my age, don't understand now, but back then you were a groundbreaker in that regard.
It was a lot of luck. I always tell people, listen, like I got really lucky in a lot of scenarios because if Nolan doesn't call me, if Nolan doesn't keep calling me, if I don't like drop the ass, so there's so many things. Social media, I can't say I saw what it was going to become early. I was just on it messing around like everybody else my age was doing at the time. I just converted my personal page into a work page. Just, at the beginning you do it for maybe selfish reasons because you want to show off your work and you want to, you're proud of what you made. And then it was so fresh and so ingenious at the time, and nobody was really doing it. It was really cool, and so I started gaining followers and momentum. And then I just kind of carved my own lane, which I never intended, which was professional athletes, which was a great lane to carve because, if I get custom shoes, I'm going to wear them till the soles fall off. So I'm not necessarily going to buy a whole bunch. Professional athletes, they may wear them one time and never again.
Sure.
That's how business just kept going and going and going. And I've been blessed. Again, at this point now, we were talking before, I have several thousand just professional athletes across every sport, from racing to soccer to football to baseball to UFC. I've done everybody I dreamed of as a kid. Like, I've built personal relationship with some people that I would honestly have said when I was young, man, like that's one of the best athletes I've ever seen.
Sure. And it's always interesting to meet your heroes, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, and it's never what you expect.
That is for sure.
Never what you expect. And I've been blessed. And one of them was, and to this day, we were talking yesterday at night, Drew Brees. I met him on a shoot for USAA like 4 years before he retired. And if I were to tell you the friendship that we have built, it's just like, to me, he's just Drew. But he was a hero of mine growing up and through college. Like, I love this guy. He was the undersized quarterback. And, And now to me, he's like one of my friends. And it's crazy. We talk multiple times a week, barely ever about football, even when he was playing. And it's just like, it's so cool. I've been blessed to be in so many rooms and walk through so many doors. I would always say a lot of the times I got into doors because of Columbus, which is still the case, because I've still been able to even collab with like people like Marcus Lemonis because of Columbus. And then now because of my career, like I've been extremely fortunate to get into rooms because either where I went to school or what I do for a living.
And, you know, all the credit to you. You know, and you've been very generous to people. I know you made shoes for the guys at UM. Mr. Pugh was mentioning you made a special pair for his son, David. I mean, McKeon's 500th victory basketball, you did something for Webb in baseball. It means a lot to the Columbus family when somebody from the family recognizes a great accomplishment like that, you know, and, you know, are we proud of you? Yeah, I guess that's the right word. I think we're happy for you. You know, it's awesome, bro.
And I appreciate that. And to me, it's like I would have never been where I'm at without, I guarantee you, those 4 years. Like, and those people, like, listen, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Weber, I played on Weber's team for a year. I got cut by Weber. I didn't like him for many years. And it wasn't his fault. He's just the coach. He's the guy that makes the decision. So,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, a lot of closed doors forced me to make my own doors. So I got into Case Western for football. I maybe would have, because I mean, I got to a point with Weber where I had to pick baseball or football, and I was like, no, I'm going to pick as many opportunities as I can. And it's not his fault, but like I look back and I'm thankful for that. McKeon was another one. McKeon was a guy that took down my enterprise. Like McKeon is the reason I stopped making money. McKeon and Mr. Gomez at the time, that's a whole crazy story. It felt like an FBI raid. But they're amazing humans, you know, and McKeon was always helpful, and he was always lenient with me, and he was always understanding, and you know, I appreciate that. And Pew, like, listen, it's so cool to me. Like, Pew was my football coach, right? Pew was one of my coaches that I never had touched the football in my life, and he was one of the guys that showed me, right? His son was wearing my shoes on his first touchdown. So it's like those circle things to me. I'm like, man, I can never put a price on that. And
exactly.
It's like I believe in loyalty. I believe in remembering the people who helped you make it. Like, for example, Nolan and those 8 guys I told you about, they paid the same price, which was significantly less than everybody else until the day they all retired. Because it was like, without those 8 guys, Souls by Sir never become Souls by Sir, right? And I believe in that. And it's like, at the end of the day, mind you, some guys were paying 6 and 7 times what those guys were paying that are on the same team with less work required. But hey, listen, if it wouldn't have been for that guy, that other guy doesn't find me. And I believe in that. And then I'm nowhere where I'm at, because if it hadn't been for Columbus and Pillars and teachers, that I had so many amazing teachers there. I mean, Herb, Shomet, there was so many people I can name, and I love all my teachers and I love all my coaches, and even people I didn't have. Now you become family just because you work there to me. So you ask me for anything and I can physically do it, I'm going to do it. Like, it's so cool to me when I get those texts right around July, August, when the freshmen start incoming and the parents are going there. Oh my God, I just saw your work in the gym. Like, I have a mural in the gym for a kid that made the Sports Center top 10 play that Ms. Marty was basically, hey, can you draw this mural? It's the first mural I ever did. And I was like, so it's like, to me, it's like, that's in a gym. It's not the physical gym I worked in, because we worked in a small little hot box. But it's the gym that the kids go in there. So I get these texts from my buddies like, oh my God, I just saw your work on the wall. That to me is priceless. Like, listen, there's no amount of money I could put on that to get that sense of like, if you had told me this 20 years ago when I was at Columbus, hey, this is going to be your life. See this wall, you're going to have your mural and it's going to be a cool thing. I'm like, you're crazy. I'm going to sell sandwiches. That's probably what I would have told you. Sandwiches or tires is what I would have told you.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good. And it's great when things come full circle. I want to ask you, though, because everybody is different. Your creative process, you know, be it whatever athlete from whatever sport, you know, they make a request, place an order. How does your mind work? I mean, do you know, is your process to just, you know, free your mind, relax, float downstream, let it come to you? Do you think it out? What do you do?
You know, it's very similar to the way I went through school. I always pay attention, right? So I was never the kid that went home and studied for 20 hours. That just wasn't me. I couldn't do it. And the same thing here. I'll have conversations with people and I listen to what they like, what they want. I'll look at their Instagram, look at what they like, styles that they're wearing off the field. And there's three ways that I do the shoes. So there's the least used, but sometimes used, is what I call the IKEA way, where, hey, Mark, I want my toe purple. I want my name here in pink. Like, they give you specific instructions. Creativity's out the window. You just follow the directions. 10% of the time. I would say 30% of the time you have the, hey, you know what? I play for the Dolphins. Just do you. I would say the other 60% is the ones that I enjoy, where we'll jump on a FaceTime, a phone call, video, and we just talk. Hey, I really like Dragon Ball Z, or hey, I really, I want to put my wife's name on there, and I'll just throw stuff at you. I just freehand it, go at it, and we end up with something really cool. I've yet to do a mock-up. I don't believe in mock-ups. So I just go, like, depending on which one of those three I'm doing, I just go. There's no accidents. I've realized I've made thousands of accidents. Nobody ever knows most of them, because that wasn't an accident. I meant to put that splatter, that thing. I meant to do that. So that's the cool part about not having mock-ups. So I just got to go. And I, knock on wood, I mean, one of my first slogans was one of one. And knock on wood, to this day, I haven't stopped running out of those ideas. They just come to me. I've been very lucky. But then again, when I go anywhere, a restaurant, walking around, school, the sky, I get ideas just by looking at stuff. Oh my God, I really like the way the sky, those colors go together. I can use that in a shoe. And that's kind of what I do. I just freestyle it. I don't have to get in a zone. I could pick up a brush at 5 a.m. and go at it, at 9 o'clock at night and go at it. It's just, I don't have to be in a zone. For that, I consider myself truly lucky, where I just go.
No, that's great to hear how that happens. Just turn off your mind and let it go. You had a pretty bad auto accident a few years ago. How did that affect your approach to life?
Yeah, well, I've had a couple. When I was in high school, when I was in college, I had a couple, and then recently, and this is when I know that the world of social media is a very dangerous situation. I was leaving my house to get on an expressway on US 1, and I got side hit by somebody who was doing something illegal, and my car flipped. Ended up on the side of the car, right off the corner of Pinecrest, and I could have sworn it was a second, but people were at my car coming to get me out of the car. Nothing happened to me. The car was totaled. I didn't tell anybody. I called my mom, my dad, and next thing you know, I'm being taken to the hospital. I meet my parents there. I didn't tell anybody, but all of a sudden, I get hundreds of text messages. Are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my God, I just saw. I'm like, how many people drive US 1 in the morning? So next thing you know, so I was like, hey, how did you know? Did you drive by? They're like, no, like, you're on TMZ that you almost died.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm on TMZ? And that's when I realized, like, listen, social media is a very great tool, but it could be very scary. And when I left that accident, it was just like, man, like, I was that close to that's it, like, to ending. But I don't think I truly ever understood the fragileness, to put it, of life until my father passed away. That's when I realized, like, shit, like, time, you can lose money and get it back. You could get unhealthy, maybe get healthy again, add a weight, get back in shape. But time, there's no getting time back. And my dad died unexpectedly, and I was at work. And I think it's since then that I've realized, like, damn, like, I love work. I love what I do. I'm guilty of, overdoing it. But, like, you have to take time for you, for your loved ones, for your family, just something. Because at the end of the day, like, my dad, he worked his whole life, like many, many parents did. They worked their whole life, put their kids through school, they live a great life, waiting for retirement to enjoy it. But my dad never hit retirement. Like, we were selling one of our companies literally 2 weeks after my father died, which would have put him into a very amazing retirement plan. He never got to see it. So that's what changed for me. That's what made me realize, like, all right, life could be here today, gone tomorrow. So really, really make sure that you live every day as much as you can, times 7. So that's kind of what I do now. Is I just, like, I love life as much as I can. I try and make sure that, like, I don't leave people upset, angry. I don't leave angry, like, just because, listen, my final conversation with my father was, we were fighting. And that is a heavy, heavy cross to carry. And
yeah, it is.
I've come to terms with it. I've realized that's how we showed each other love, because we had one of those tough relationships. But like, time is the one thing you're never getting back. Like, you're never going to get time back. So what? You bust your butt for 50 years, 40 years, 60 years to hope that now you're 70, you could travel the world. You could barely walk sometimes. Like, you can't. If you could take a trip, take it. If you could pursue a passion, even if money's not there, do it. Like, that's how I believe now. And that's what I would always tell anybody. Like, tomorrow's not promised. So if you could do it today, do it today. Like, so you got to sacrifice something. Okay, cool. But if it drives you and it makes you happy and there's love involved, like, why not?
Time waits for no one, bro.
No.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Is there anything you haven't done yet in the sports world that you would like to do? How about the NHL? Have you been approached by the NHL yet for skates?
You know, it's funny. I have. I haven't done it yet. We haven't pulled the trigger on that. But yeah, there is a long. Every day I wake up and there's like, man, I really want to do this. I wish I could get this opportunity. I want to work with this person. Yeah, there's a long list, and I've been blessed. I've been able to cross out something and put something else back on it. The NHL, I haven't had a skate in a game yet. I've painted skates before. And I think this may be the season coming up that I will actually have it on ice. But the NHL is there. Man, there's so many. I haven't done a president. That's something I've wanted to always do.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, like, and it's crazy because I've looked at my list over years, and not that I would put low bars, but I always thought my bar was super high. But I've, again, been super fortunate to knock off stuff that's like, really, like, that is wild. And I just keep going crazier and crazier. So yeah, like, I mean, on that list now, I know a president's on there, customize a shoe on an airplane. Like, it's just random stuff. Like, I want to do stuff that, like, man, that's really cool. And like, mind you, I've done a lot of stuff that I could brag about one day to my grandkids. But it's just like, yeah, like, I keep pushing myself. And that's one of those things that I learned way back when at Columbus. Like, 5 sandwiches was never enough. Like, I wanted to do more and get more and get more and get more, because it was just like, I know I can do it. And it wasn't like it was a gift and a curse, because I always wanted more and I knew I was capable of it. So I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's do it. And that's what happens to me now, even with my goals. It's like, oh, I could do this. Like, let's go for it. And then this class, like the class that I'm teaching now, that, you know, it ended up being, it fell in my lap where people wanted me to teach them how to customize and have a really cool date night concept. And I did the first one. I was nervous as you won't believe. I've been in front of some amazing people and I was not nervous. 20 strangers in a room painting shoes that I don't even have to paint anything for. Beyond nervous, but it went off without a hitch. The next night went off with a hitch, and I had such an amazing, vast array. The youngest person I had in the class was 17, and I had 78-year-olds in the class, and everybody loved it and came out with a gorgeous works that they all did, and a lot of them had never painted. But oh man, I used to do this. I used to love to paint in high school, and the one of the older people that was in their 60s. The last time I painted, I was in high school. Oh man, I really love this. And I was like, man, that made me feel special, because they were going to go home and buy paints and start painting stuff again. And that's the ultimate gift that you can get.
Let me ask you, Marcus, 21 years ago, you were at Columbus High School. What would you say to a current explorer about pursuing their dreams?
Okay. So, it's funny because I often look back and I ask myself, what would I have told me in that school?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Like the current kids, there's a couple of things. Well, one, don't chase the money, because if you ever chase the money, there'll be a day when that number that you thought was enough is not going to be enough. If you chase the money in a career that you're not passionate about, like, oh, I want to be a lawyer because they make 6, 7, 8 figures. Great. But there's a day you're going to make 6, 7, 8 figures and you're going to be miserable. Versus,
I know a lot of those lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know them too. And I'm just like, man, like, you would think the money's, it could be the root of all evil. It could be happiness. It could be a lot of things. So number one, it wouldn't be chase the money. Like, chase your passion. Because, like, listen, the first day I told my mom that I was going to do this, and I joke with her, and I always say, I remember when, because my mom said, I don't know how you're going to make money doing this, Mark. And I remember telling her, I don't know either, but I'll figure it out. And she had faith in me, and she said, go. And she always supported me. And I would have never imagined being where I'm at now. I mean, listen, a lot of artists, and it's sad because there's so many creative people in this world that are very creative, but don't pursue it because of the lack of what they think to be money on the other end. Okay. My thing would be like, don't chase the money. Chase your passion. If your passion is painting, if your passion is building homes, whatever, chase that. because you'll figure out a way to get creative. Now that's when the creativity comes. Well, how can I make more money doing this? Well, you know what? Let me make model homes that are super cool, or let me do this, let me do that. So the number one thing would be don't chase the money, chase your passion. And then like the whole carpe diem, seize the day thing. I wish I had told myself that more, because there were so many opportunities I left on the table. Trips that I didn't go on, semesters abroad, stuff with my family. Like there's so many things I left on the table that I wish I can go back for. And at the end of the day, when you can't do something anymore, like my father, I can't go to a baseball game with my dad anymore. Yeah. There were so many times I could have. Like I'm in a perfect position. I can make phone calls whenever I want to go to any game in the world I want to go to, and I didn't. Like one of my things was the last Super Bowl before my father passed away. I've had Super Bowl tickets for like 4 or 5 years. I've had opportunities to buy them, and I bought them and sold them in true Columbus make money fashion. And last year, I was gonna tell my dad, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And it killed me. I went to the game, and then when I was negotiating my contract with the NFL this season, I said I need access to 4 tickets. I'll pay for them all, but I need access to 4 tickets. And my argument was me and plus one, and then my mom and dad were going. Like that's what I was going to do. My dad never got to see that day. He got to see me negotiate that, but his Christmas gift last Christmas was going to be like, hey, by the way, 2 of these are yours. And I never got to do that. And I took my mom. I took my mom, and she enjoyed it, and many tears were shed because of what happened. So that would be my 2 things. Live every day, take every opportunity you could take, and follow the passion, not the money. The money will come, I promise you.
That's pretty profound. And I know that our president, Tom Kruzak, is a big fan of yours because he was an entrepreneur. And, you know, anytime you want to come to school, and you have before, but, you know, you realize this, you have an open door to anything you want to do at Columbus High School. And again, proud of you, sure. Happy for you. Absolutely. And brother, I mean, we could keep going. But I have enjoyed this one, Mark, as much as I've enjoyed any of them in 5 years. And you're a busy man, and you took the time to do it. And I got to tell you, while you were talking, it allowed me, being the certain age that I am, to go back to those times and just how carefree and freewheeling they were, and what an integral part you were of adding to the character and characters of Columbus High School. So thank you so much, my brother. Good luck with all your endeavors. Keep pushing. And again, all the best to you, my friend.
I appreciate you. It was truly my pleasure. I know I've been wanting to do this for a while, and we've had scheduled situations. I'm so thankful to be on there. Listen, Columbus always holds a special place in my heart. I'm still waiting for the day Columbus decides to say, hey, we're going to have an entrepreneurship competition with the kids that are there, because I would so be a part of that. And I know there's so many alum that would love to do that, because I'm not the only. I've had these conversations with other alum, and listen, it all started there. And there's so many ways, and now we're in a position where we can give back, that I'm waiting for that day. I love Columbus. Whenever they tell me I'm there, because it's an amazing place. It's basically a college campus at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild. I'm thankful. I was very blessed that my parents put me in that school. I'm glad I was able to talk to you. I'm glad that you were in those hallways when I was in those hallways.
Yeah, man.
You know, times were different. There was what do you call those things? Drumsticks being thrown, erasers being launched. It was a different age. And
things might have happened.
I mean, listen, like you said, the law of statute of limitations is long gone, but it was great. Thank you for having me. Whatever I could do to give back, especially to those people that help make me and get me where I'm at, is always a guarantee.
Listen, bro, entrepreneur contest, consider it done. We'll be in touch on that.
Let's do it. I absolutely would love to go and help and do whatever I can, because there's a lot of great minds in that school, and it's not necessarily the smartest kids on paper that come up with stuff. So I'm all about it, man. You count me in, and I will be there, sir.
All right, my brother. Thank you so much. Explore Nation, I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did, because this was amazing. All right, until next time, adelante. Buenos tiempos, Mark. Thanks, bro.
Adelante, buenos tiempos, my man. Love it.
All right, bro.